Okay, welcome all. Thank you for being with us today. This is another edition of GWF webinars. My name is Sarah. I work for Geospatial Media. I'm the product manager for Geospatial World Forum and the webinars. Today we are discussing co-creating cities, transforming urban design and development. So basically we are talking about how we can involve citizens in the urban planning and urban design process. With us today we have two eminent speakers. Our first speaker is Miss Marianne SCHREURS. Marianne is the co-lead of Innovate City Initiative from European Innovation Partnership on Smart Cities and Communities. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, very nice to join you, and it's such a shame that we are not have not been able to be at the World Forum, but it's wonderful to have this online webinar. Thank you very much for organizing it.
Look forward to your presentation. And our second speaker is Mr. Claudius LIEVEN. He is the head of unit citizen participation at City of Hamburg. Hi, Claudius.
Hi, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be with you and a pleasure to have the chance to speak to such an interesting topic. And I hope you will enjoy the session.
To all audience, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. I can see some of you already did. Every speaker will speak for 20 minutes, and at any point during the presentation, if you have any questions for the speakers, please type them in the chat box as well. We will take all questions at the end of the session. So now, without further ado, I'm going to start Marianne's presentation.
In my presentation, I'm not talking about the geospatial environment, but what I want to give to you at the beginning is that in the end, we will really need it, and it will give us tremendous possibilities in care at a distance and in any way possible, but we have to be in control. We have to be in control as cities. We have to be control in citizens, because otherwise it will not give the rewards that we are able to give it. Public space, city for people. I used to be a vice mayor in Eindhoven, and I was tremendously involved in things that dealt with public space, that dealt with innovation, that dealt with design. Actually, I introduced design and innovation as topics for policies in the cities. So all the things that we are talking about now are really things that I've been dabbling with in the past. And I also were part of some European things. But in the end, it's just making things for people. And that's the reason that the subject is city for people. If you look at public space, you know that in the end, public space is for everybody. And it's to meet. And that's more than just to enable you to go from one place to another place to do things. It's actually also the place where you meet each other and acknowledge each other. It doesn't mean that you have to be friends with everybody in public space, but it's really the only place that we all can be there. And the wonderful thing is, if you look at public space as a commons, it's also natural to be able to add your own thing. And that's the new development. Citizens are not just receivers of policies, they are really the ones that make things happen, are co-creators. This is something that I did in the city of Eindhoven, and for that you need new tools. And my new tool was design, and I introduced that in 2004, and it was purely by chance. And I thought, oh, this is wonderful, because this allows us to take everybody in, to have all stakeholders tell us what is really important in their lives, for example, to be able to use public space in a way that they want to. In the end, what you do is, when you have such a differentiation of things that are important, you create a next step. And the next step is not, and that is very important, that you have to have the same opinions, that you have to be of one mind. That's not what people actually do, think the same. What you do is you take responsibility for your city, for your public space, jointly say, well, this works, and this works in many fashions. And it doesn't mean that you create paradise, you create things that work, tools that are fit. And what you specifically think about the tools is secondary. So it's really making steps forward. Sometimes that even involves a big conceptual change, and also that is something that is catered for by designers. And one of the things about designers is they are always positive, they are always creating. So that's, it used to be product design, but it can also be a way of thinking, it can be anything, but conceptually it's always positive. Well, that meant that things had to change in my city. Policy had to change. For we more or less, since the Second World War, had were organized like factories. So everything had to be split up. And now you want to have a holistic model in which every way of looking at things counts. Of course, it was also top down. And what you are doing now is you said, no. Every way of thinking counts. So it's egalitarian. And the wonderful thing is, it's not about blueprinting things. You can't, also by doing things change. So what you are doing is inventing together how to do it. So it's at the same time thinking and doing and making step forwards. And if that isn't the right step, you say, well, we have to change it a bit. So it's not about blueprints. It's taking care that all the time you are able to take a step forward. Well, in public space policy, that meant that we ended, and that's more specific, being a city of cars, which is really a city of objects in public space, but we are now a city that is also a city for people, for subjects, created for and with people. So you went from being predominantly infrastructure orientated, that's a big development in Eindhoven, and being there and doing things was equally important. But at the same time, it included all kinds of other policies. They had to be included on green, on water. And one of the big examples, and it was very easy to arrange that, all roads had to be as green as possible. And it just takes you 1 second to write it down. And the implementation isn't that hard. It's just regulating it. And with water, we did the same. If it isn't climate adaptive, the project is cancelled. It really has to cater for the future. It has to be future resistant. And there are a lot of more examples. But the interesting thing is, in a way, this is still dealing with things as we used to do as a local government. And now we enter a different ballgame. Technology. It more or less happened at the same time. We all know that it started with smart city, and it was because a lot of companies were just looking for a way to have customers. And the real problem is that it's a technology push. And in the end, it was a city takeover. Give us your city and we will make you happy. You have the difficulty with procurement. You have to take care that you are not locked in by the companies delivering the goods. You have lack of knowledge and the resources. And what you see is that very few cities are able to cope with situations like that. And since Eindhoven is a city in which technology is created, we were able to deal with it in a way. So I created roadmaps, roadmaps on light, roadmaps on energy, roadmap on education, whatever. And we went for innovative procurements for 7 years, because that meant that you really are able to work with companies as partners. And we invented the Urban Design Institute. And that was really to integrate all the things that were happening at the same time, and to have a co-creation with the local university on really taking care also on the values that were incorporated in the things that we are doing. And for that, we also introduced a countervailing power. What you see is that people involved in technology, most of the time, they are brilliant and very dedicated, a lot of happy guppies, but they are taking care of the technology problems. And on the other end, you have to take care that it works for people. So we brought that side in, and normally they are very critical. And we said to them, well, you can be as critical as hell, but in the end, you have to help all of us to make the next steps. And what you saw was that for citizens, it was more about that the total story, their lifetime story, had to be compatible to the technology that was being created. And also we saw that a lot of data didn't suffice to really make it work for people. You have to have more. You have to really to have them involved. One of the things that is very interesting, and for that you really need 5G, is the twin city. You know, the replica of your city, because that allows you to prototype with solutions without actually making them. And it is also much easier to have young people involved in that, and all kinds of people, and not the normal people that come to you when you organize an evening for talking about the future of the city. It's really, well, in a way, it's gaming. So then the new problem arose, AI. And we all know that the only solution for using AI is really having a different governance and regulation to ensure that the black box that AI tends to be is regulated in a way that it is compatible to the way we want to live. And what we saw was the rise of platforms who were all of them using AI. And what do? They take over your city, not in Germany because the legislation is there different, but they take over your city and you have to deal with the effects. And it can be Uber, it can be or Amazon delivering all the parcels, but in the end you have to cope with it. And the solution is partly created in Europe by the GDPR, so the regulation on privacy and data. And of course, there is now regulation on AI and things like that. But within your city, what you want and what you actually do not want, and there are tremendous good examples of how to regulate it with people that are doing things in your city, is really up to you. It will be very different from one city to the other. To give you an example, Amsterdam in the Netherlands has a lot of problems with tourists. Well, in Eindhoven, I can assure you one thing, we do not have a tourist problem. On the contrary. So, but the thing we want to give to cities are the policy labs, so that you can decide, even when you have a policy that is implemented in another city on a certain subject, that you can make it to measure. And then you go back to design, the design methodology. Whom do you invite? Well, all the stakeholders. But it's an adaptive regulation because you have to change it all the time. It's for the specific circumstances in your city. And of course, then it's done in co-creation with all the stakeholders. And now it's even becoming more complicated because, specifically because of Corona, we saw that things were very much changing in our societies, in our cities. And Corona, in a way, is a catalyst in that. So now everything is happening at the same time. And really the question is, are we able in cities to cope with that? And we already saw that in Eindhoven, more or less, you could deal with it because it's a technology city. But even we were not able to do it all. And now, really, nobody is able to do it on their own anymore. Well, maybe Paris and London and the tremendous big city. But how on earth are smaller and medium-sized cities able to deal, for example, with the big European program that is now on its way in making the green transformation? If you all have to invent it yourself. So, what my partner and I are doing is now creating a cooperative to be able to join power as cities, to take control. And it's a very ancient structure, a cooperative. It's without gains. It's just enabling cities to take the technology that has already been used elsewhere. And within a cooperative, you don't have not to deal with procurement and things like that. And just focus on the thing that from olden times you were responsible for, and that's the policy. And so within the cooperative, all the things that I've been talking about, the roadmaps and are there to be used. All the solutions are there to be used. The solutions can be created in a procurement. Anything can be done as a service within that framework. You don't have to use it if you are a member, but you can. And in the end, it's just a tool, like design is a tool to be able to cope with a world that we actually want to live in. And it will be similar all over the world, and it will be different all over the world. But if we can help each other in any way, you have to take care that there is a form created that can do that. These are the advantages that you can see within the framework. And this, again, is the most important one. Really being in control. And you can be, if you want to choose, you can just adapt things that are being created. You can be a private, public cooperation. You can be an ecosystem which puts a lot into it because you are able to choose your own role, but in the end, take control. That is really the smart thing to do. Important is also that this helps also companies in a lot of ways because they spend a lot of money on procurement, and in the end, that money, well, 3/4 of the time, it's a waste of money because they will not get it. And the other thing is they are not able to develop their things together with cities. So this is in a way helping them to do it. Thank you. I think it was a bit over time.
No, Marianne, you're early. Thank you so much, Marianne. So I think now we will carry on with Claudius' presentation, and I'll see you again after his presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello together again. I'll tell a little story about digital citizen participation in Hamburg, how we apply this and how we develop new tools. A little view on the background. I'm the head of a staff unit in the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing in Hamburg. It's called Stadtwerkstatt in German, or Urban Workshop translated to English. We organize information and participation on citywide topics, advise and support authorities, districts, and public companies in participation procedures, and develop new methods and instruments for citizen participation. Firstly, I'll shed light a little bit on online and classic participation. We know classic participation formats like information, meetings, and venues, and workshops. The Senate of our city decided to intensify this in the course of rapid growth of the city and many changes that take place due to that. And we began in 2012 intensifying all this workshop work. And from 2016 on, we had developed own online participation tool to open up an online channel as well to the citizens, because not everybody has the time or possibility to come to these meetings and workshops in the evenings or on the weekends. We developed this software ourselves to be independent, to have digital sovereignty over the data, and to be able to bring it to all our authorities and districts in the city. In the center of all of our methods stands the collection of ideas. Here you see the analog way. People write suggestions on cards and stamp them on a map, for instance, of a development area. And by this way, we collect their feedback. And in the online modus, it's just the same. You place your idea on a digital map, and by that way, we collect the response of the citizens, their preferences, their demands, or their preoccupations. Of course, these workshops don't come out of the nothing. They are embedded into complex and meanwhile hybrid participation processes. We go through a series of steps. There is a kickoff event. Usually we have some outreaching participation, maybe an info booth on the market. And we have the online participation phase in the early stage of the participation process to allow the citizens to bring everything in what they regard as important. Then we have a series of workshops and draft recommendations that are handed over to the authorities who take the decisions about the planning process or the planning project. So we have reached a point where we regularly apply the online participation in planning processes. We had more than 40 in the last 5 years, 15,000 contributions, survey participants, and comments to ideas. And the topics which are treated with the online participation vary broadly. In the first place, it is, of course, urban planning, as well mobility planning, and climate and energy plays a role, environment and green, and we have also a community platform. As well, the scale is adaptable. It is from regional to citywide to district-wide to quarter, a neighborhood, or a single plot. So we can cope with a very broad range of issues, nearly every space-related planning topic, and we can apply it on a broad scale of broad scale. We were very happy with this development, but we found it insufficient to work in the workshops with the citizens, the analog workshop in the analog way with pen and paper, because this produces data which is difficult to analyze and to transfer. At that point, a project came into play, the City Scope, which our City Science Lab had developed. And it is a digital planning table where you can project maps and data, and it also reacts to your actions and gives feedback with the answer from data banks regarding certain projects or certain plots. This was very successful in the work with the citizens, but this installation is not mobile. It is in the university, and you have to bring the people to the university to do the workshops. Because of that, we developed a mobile set of tools. In the center is a touch table, a mobile touch table, and you have an info screen for additional information, and you have tablets for the input of the citizens' contributions. As well, every citizen can use its mobile phone. The tablet is just for those who maybe don't bring a mobile phone. With this installation, we can go and planning workshops in the districts where they happen in schools or community centers. So we merged our online tool with these digital on-site tools. It is all based on our geo data system, where we have more than 400 data layers and many maps and aerial photos, and the latter from our city. And it combines evaluation tools, because the more response you get, the more information you have to process. And having handy tools, and we are also developing AI support for that, the easier becomes the evaluation of the citizens' responses. This is such a map table in action, and we have developed a GUI, a user interface for that, where you can choose from various map backgrounds. Here you see also indicated citizens' contributions to a certain development area, which I'll touch later. And you can retrieve information from databases, and also integrate draft planning proposals, or retrieve the content of these citizens' contributions. All that to work with this information in the workshops with the citizens, to motivate them to give more ideas and more information to us. As well, there is a possibility to switch to a 3D mode. This is the status at the moment, but it will improve. We have also the direction of a digital twin, very advanced 3D model with many data capacities. So we are piloting the system in live processes, and I'll show you one use case for that. The participation process for the Grasbrook redevelopment. Hamburg is a city by a big river and the biggest port of Germany. But ports also change, and some parts of the port become transformation areas, as the area shown here, about 40 hectares in the size. The idea, which was developed initially is a redevelopment to a mixed-use urban quarter. The colors here, red, indicate housing, blue is for offices and retail, and purple is a school and a museum. It was a draft idea, just to have an indication what should be the topic there, and then with this we invited the citizens to give their feedback. There was a series of workshops together with online participation and as well on-site events. And all this came to the formulation of the tasks for the invited planning bureaus. This was a very important step of the citizen participation, because the analysis of the recommendations were derived and implemented into the goals for the urban design competition. The bureaus developed a first rough idea. This was then presented, discussed with the citizens. The citizens' role was there to evaluate how good did the bureaus fulfill their recommendations, and how do they evaluate the solutions they propose. There was as well a second decision. The final decision took place in this April, and we had planned an event to present the final proposals, but we had to switch on an online event, and this worked also very well for just one day, because we were in a dense or tough time frame with the following jury decision. By this way, in workshops and online, a pool of contributions was collected, and we derived out of that visions and values, test orders, and idea data bank. The visions and values here in a short overview pointed out that it should be an island of opportunities and sustainable mobility and open spaces and access to the water should be emphasized, just to pick out some. The point was that with this essence, we tried to bring the creative impact of the citizens into the planning and make them, by that way, co-creators of the urban environment. The outcome of the design competition is this picture. It is the winning proposal of Herzog de Meuron. And I can indicate some aspects that were highly emphasized during the participation process, as, for instance, this bridge, which connects the existing quarter to the new quarter, and should be a green bridge of large width to allow a very convenient crossing of the big railway connection that lies here under that. And as well, the citizens emphasized the wish to keep a bit of the old harbor infrastructure, a big warehouse complex, in fact. Initially, it was considered to crack this down, and now it is at the core of the new functional model of the city. It shall contain community amenities and retail and sports facilities, and it's directly connected to the central square and this bridge. As well, in the housing area, we have green roofs. We have the idea and the task to construct a lot of the buildings with wood, out of wood, and to bring in a lot of building communities, building housing cooperatives newly founded by citizens who decide that they would like to live on this grass-broke island. And by this way, another image, an imagination of the future. Of course, it's a bit more real than real, but we think that the foundations are laid through this very open, very transparent, and very cooperative, co-creative process to get to an urban design where the knowledge of experts as well as the input of citizens mingle together and produce a pattern for a city for tomorrow. So far from my side, I'm happy to look on your questions now.
Thank you, Claudius. Can I have Marianne back on the screen so we can start our Q&A session? Yes. So there is not many questions from audience as of now, but if you have any questions, please post them on the chat box. So to start, my first question to both of you is, obviously cities are talking about COVID, the recovery from COVID. So how do you see this technology can help in this process? Like I imagine there will be a lot of repurposing of spaces, because now we will need more open spaces for the social distancing measure. So how can you use this technology to apply to these new measures that for COVID-19?
I saw that Hamburg was also creating twins from the specific city. What is interesting is you have to start by what has been going on there and also what is important. So before creating a lot of ideas, it's important to really understand, for example, in public space, why it is being used and how it is being used. And one of the interesting things about creating twin cities is that actually, if you find something important in public space, you can take 29 pictures and then it can be uploaded and then it's there. So in a way, you also create your public space in the existing form together with your citizens. And since they say, wait, this is important, that's also input on, that is something that you have to deal with. So the first thing is to understand how your city was actually functioning. And I don't know how it is in Hamburg, but we were so bad at that. And I was in total admiration, because in Copenhagen for years and years, they yeah, you know it. Every intervention was looked upon, and how did people behave? How are people behaving now because of the intervention? And so they have a solid background on really knowing what works in public space and what doesn't work, and still they monitor it all the way. So they can help us in doing that. But that's the important thing. If you are going to change things, that first of all, you also have to know if you are not throwing away the baby with the bathwater. So it looks natural to create vast, open, green spaces, but maybe that means that a specific site in the city that was a bit more secluded, and that was used, for instance, by elderly people or by young people, because we tend to ignore all the young people who have to really be in open, well, in the space, because that's part of their life. So it's really start with making the analysis together with your citizens. And I was looking, I was in total awe in what you have created. And the wonderful thing is also that people are also very interested in what was already there. So you saw that the history of Hamburg, this is, well, don't throw away the history, let's use it in a different form. And if you look, that it's very modernistic, and that started after the Second World War also, to just demolish your city and build it up new. And in Eindhoven, you see the effect, because we were a city that was doing very well. We were expanding because of all the industry that was there, and the industry was booming. And all the old cities that were not doing well, like Maastricht and Den Bosch, and they had no money to spend. And that are the attractive cities. So in a way, we have to be much more, how do you call it? We must really take care of not destroying what is important in our city. And for that, you need an analysis on all levels, because it's at a big level, at the total way the city is structured, especially with its infrastructure, but it's also on the very minute level of how is a street constructed, and what is exactly happening in the street, and things like that. So if you do it without your citizens, that's the wonderful thing. If you do it without your citizens, you are bound to fail, because you are creating things that will not be used or will be destroying other things. And but what you also see, and that is even more important, that we really have to stop inventing the wheel, all of us. So yeah, because you see all the steps that Hamburg has taken in this new development, they are very interesting. And so this is something that you should copy and use it in your own way. So
yeah, so Claudius, have you actually used this technology against COVID? Like, how do you use it to respond to the disease?
We are using it at the moment, the online participation tool, to substitute the events and workshops which we can't carry out at the moment. So we do not want to interrupt all the planning processes. To maintain the citizen involvement, we try to compensate with online participation. So we have more online participation processes at the moment. But that was what Marianne said. I totally agree that a close observation of any planning area and its surrounding is core in the approach to create something new. And in my eyes, it's also very similar important to ask the citizens about their knowledge and their observations. They are the local experts for their area, and they know many things we planners do not know, and which are not regarded in the plans. And they give us important hints and insights. And so my mantra is ask the citizens. We get information, we get smarter through these informations. They are lay people, of course, but they are local experts. And regarding traffic, regarding the chronotope, who uses which space when, this is important, and you can't nearly get it from any other source.
And it's something else that is happening. We are getting a different connection to the countryside as cities. And in a way that was already happening, because when you deal with water, so the water structure, you really, well, water doesn't stop at the border of your city or municipality. And what you see also is that the focus is going from water to soil. Soil determines more and more what you are able to do in a certain place and what you are not able to do. And that means that you have to be able to exchange things that you are able to do. And that means that there isn't a municipality anymore. Yeah, well, you are working together in the big Hamburg city structure. So in a way, it's already cooperating with other municipalities, I understand. But that's the most important thing. It's sometimes, no, all the time, it's that the other one, and it also applies to municipalities and the people working in it, that your colleague is not a problem. In a way, your colleague is the solutions to problems that you have, because they are able to do some things that will help you achieve the goals that you have to go for. And that also means that sometimes you can exchange it in places. So it's really so much different from being just doing your own thing. That's the essential thing, whether it's with citizens, with the industry, with all the other stakeholders in your city, but also with the total environment. And that makes it a very difficult process. So in the end, it also means that sometimes, as you were saying, you do it at very different levels. Sometimes you have to say, well, at this level, we can really create a result. And yes, we will not take the whole surroundings in, but we will inform them that, so that if there are things happening that are really catastrophic for them, they can put their finger up. But the main process we will be doing in a rather secluded group of people, because otherwise you are really not able to make steps forward. So it has to be a half-open structure, because otherwise, and that is very difficult for municipalities to deal with, because normally we have projects and another project, and never the twain shall meet. And now it has to be, well, opened up during a time, because there can be interference. And of course, you also can learn from each other.
Right. I'm looking through the questions that we have from audience. Many of them are asking, how do you, how can you involve everybody? What kind of, citizen participation that you consider, okay, this is enough? How do you manage to overcome sometimes there are a lot of different opinions as well. So what kind of processes do you normally do?
Well, you first.
Okay. Well, the inclusivity of processes is a big topic. Here, how broad do you reach people, old and young, women and men, and so on. And in general, the activity in politic participation, and this is a form of participation in elections, in referendums, and also in this citizen participation, goes after the same lines, so that you have higher education means higher involvement, and there are some structures which are homogeneous. But we see that with online participation, we reach younger people more than older, and in the on-site venues, we usually have a majority 50 plus. As well, we have a good balance of male and female participants, where we have in the on-site venues mostly men, or majority of men. But we have not reached the good inclusivity regarding people with a migrant background. there is a bias towards the native Germans, that, for instance. And so there is this inclusivity topic is, there is still work to do. And I think online channels help, but they are not the answer to all the questions regarding this.
In a way, certainly with topics that are important on the level of the city itself, as a whole, you can escape by creating a citizen council. And the citizen council constitutes of people that will that are chosen randomly. It's really aselective, so that there's participation of very different people, and it's a kind of jury duty. And when that topic is over, new people come in, and they get a lot of information by experts. So the experts are in a way helping them to reach the decision, and it's a way of making the process more democratic. What you then always have to do afterwards is put it to the council, and then the council can make a referendum of it, or in any other way, because it has to be really approved. But that works very well at a higher level. At a lower level, what you really need is to have everybody involved. And as my colleague was stating, then you have to use different tools. And what I found out is that if you are really searching for very young people, the very nice way of dealing with it is including the schools. Because, and then at very different level, because then you can make it a part of their curriculum, so they are working for themselves, and also they can involve themselves, because that's really the issue. And so it works wonderful, because then they are also used to participating in things like that. But it's looking for ways to do it, but otherwise, if you just do it in a small room, you always get, well, plus 50 is, it's even worse. Everybody who is a pensioner comes over, and if you do it online, you also get a certain type of people, and that is the reason that I was so very interested in the Twin City development, because when it is created, and also created with your citizen himself, it creates an environment in which you can actually go. And that is also very difficult. And that's why in Hamburg, they're also straining to get the 3D representation. Some of us are able to look at plans and actually see what that means, and otherwise have people help us to see what it means. But people function very differently. So for some, it's important to be able to go around in it, and actually after they have been going around it, go back to the normal place and see how it works in real life. So you really have to make an effort, and in a way, that's the big development. It's the big development is really enabling people to participate in a way that is comfortable to them. And that was actually not what we were doing, what we were always doing. With all good intentions, we were first of all creating the best life possible, and then we found out that you should ask people what they actually found the best life possible, and then we also not, because we did it our way, and it's really, and that's the wonderful thing that is brought by the technological developments, is that you can create environments, also virtual environments, in which you are able to cater for how people work. You can bring the past, and so it's, well.
Yeah. But when we talk about technology, it might be a little not so much in Europe, but in other regions there are quite a big gap of digital divide. Mm-hmm. There are some group of people who are totally not cannot afford technology. So how do you think we can involve this community as well in the urban planning process?
Well, what you see is that you only need a phone, and you don't even need a special phone because all the how do you call it, all the real hardware and software is run at a different time. So you only have to have access. So the tool can be very simple. And but what is even more important is that all the technology that is being implemented in your city is that you really take care that it is doing the things that you as a society find important. And that was the reason that I was stressing, because what in Hamburg, it's very much about implementation, and the example is very much about implementation. But in it, you nowadays are putting all kinds of technology. And in the end, the real question is, do I want to be led, or do we want to be leading? So you have the technology push, but we are human beings, we shouldn't be pushed. You have a data driven, it's even more appalling. You want human driven data. So on the scale of the community as a whole, probably you should arrange it, as I said, with a group of citizens representing all the others, and really going into and giving an advice of what's important for the city technology-wise, and what can be done and what can't be done. But within the implementation, it can be as simple as still getting together, or just using your phone to be able to. So the technology gap, in a way, is becoming smaller and smaller, as long as you are able as a city to have the system running at another site. And of course, that is an enormous investment. And that is really the reason that you need the upscaling to take place. And I know that in Africa also everybody's working together to make it possible. In the end, that's the real problem. Are we able, on the one hand, not to exclude anybody? Well, in a way that looks simple if you make the analysis that we were talking about, how are things going, and you can do it in a lot of ways. Even if people are not, some people can go around and ask it and well, research. So that's the one part. But the other part is the things that you have to use have to be decided on by yourself. But if you want to use it, it should be created as a service. And that is something that the big tech companies are learning us. If this wasn't so easy to handle, I wouldn't be in it all the time searching for things, because that's the problem. They organize it in a way that
absolutely, that's absolutely the point. The technology can help to bridge the gap, because all you need is a smartphone. And of course, the task for us is to make the tools really easy to use, as easy as WhatsApp. Yeah. Hopefully. Right. We didn't reach this point by now, but we invest a lot of hours and money into the design of the interfaces to make them really easily usable with smartphones, so that everybody has an easy access. And it is, for instance, for people with migrant background in these venues which are in German language, not so easy to stand up and speak, but to type on your own with enough time, your sentences, your inputs. That is easy. That is there the barrier is lower.
Yeah, and the next time it can always be that you just say it, because the technology is moving forward, so it isn't about being able to express, especially in sentences, but what we are, the topic at hand is also, that means that you really have a different relationship with big companies, because what they do normally is they sell everybody the same software, and everybody pays. And actually, the price is well. They are monopolizing things, so it isn't a market anymore. So the interesting thing is, and that was also the reason that the cooperative was started, is we should be the ones that say, this is actually what we want to have, create it, and we will be able to share it. And yes, of course, you will be paid for it, but you will not be paid for it in a way that a monopoly is run. You will be paid for it because it's worth a certain amount of money, and of course you will be able to adapt it, and if you adapt it, you'll be paid extra and so forth. But in a way, if we don't take control ourselves, we will be controlled.
True, true. So we only have a few minutes left. Claudius, you already have this amazing system in place. So what do you think like new technologies like 5G, AI can further enhance the application? What is your future vision for DPAS?
Yes, certainly. I want firstly to touch 2 or 3 questions here in the chat. The question was, is it based on Esri? No, it is not. It is based on our own maps and is based on Drupal, which is an open source framework. So the entire open source software is open source. We run it with our maps and data, but you can also run it with OpenStreetMaps. Just implement GeoJSON, and then you have the ability to represent your area. So the idea is to upscale it or to share it with other communities. We are working with German cities, but we also had contacts with Mexico and others. So this is adaptable. We are on this way. The prospects regarding AI and 3D, this topic of digital twins, is really some way a game changer, possibly, because we will have a digital representation of the built city. In a way, you really aggregate a lot of data, a lot of information. That is very useful for the city officials, those who run the city, but it is also of use for the citizens, because as Marianne said, not everybody can read a building plan, but you can see the model because it is a 3D model with facades and many details. The other point is AI in the analysis of the contributions, because as I touched it, if you ask a lot, you get a lot of response. And to read all this response and the people comment the ideas of others, and you have threads of discussion, and how do you evaluate that? And therefore, AI can be very helpful. You have text analysis systems which show you which are the contributions with the most feedback, with the most evaluation, or the most also controversially debated ideas, so that you can have a quick view on the topic landscape.
Right. Okay, 1 minute left. I'll give it to Marianne.
Well,
what are your final thoughts on citizen participation in the future of cities?
Well, foremost, that they are the ones that are participating, and you should always take care that AI is also only a tool. But in the end, the real discussion has to be between human beings. And the real problem with AI is AI reflects the values of the one that writes the software. And more we are seeing that it isn't that they are up to no good, it's more that they lack the ability to look from it to it from different sides. And that is really what's happening. One latest example, in Amsterdam, they did research, and a lot of people with higher education during COVID said, oh, this is wonderful because the city is so silent and we can see all the architecture, and oh, this is the wonderful, what a wonderful place to be. And people with lower education were in different circumstances. They were in smaller houses, and they really were afraid of public space, because what could happen to you? And they were hearing the sirens predominantly and things like that. So for one, public space was turning into a paradise, and for the other half, it was a state that was, well, challenging and normally policies are written by people with higher education. So that's the same is so with policy, you need the citizens, but also when you are implementing AI, you really need to be able to see what is happening right there. And that is not what is happening now. So this is the real problem. We can use all those tools, really, they are wonderful, but it depends on the way that you use it. And all of us should be involved and all the time monitoring if it really, with a feedback, if it really helps. But I really want to visit Hamburg. It's when
Yeah, you're invited.
Thank you. No, it's really next door.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you so much for a great webinar. This webinar is recorded, so all attendees will receive a link to the recording by tomorrow. So I hope to see all of you again in the next GWF webinar. Thank you so much, Marianne and Claudius. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Claudius.
Sarah, thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.